Chapter 2401. Pleas from various forces? Chapter 2401. Pleas from various forces? Yi Futian looked below. Naturally, he knew that Feng Ru was right, that the will of Ziwei the Great was hidden amongst the celestial stars. He could indeed borrow them in battle, but his plane was a little low after all. He was only 7th level Renhuang plane, so his powers were limited even after borrowing from the celestial stars, let alone in comparison with the actual Great Emperor. In fact, he didn't even manage to release 30% of the celestial powers. Otherwise, even if Feng Ru were only one step away from becoming Great Emperor, he would still be obliterated. So what if he was as powerful as one could be short of being a Great Emperor? The will of the Great Emperor was carved into the celestial stars. The explosive power of its attack was equivalent to a portion of the power of the Great Emperor. It was just that Yi Futian couldn't unleash it fully. Of course, even then, one could see how strong Feng Ru was. Even with such a powerful attack, all it did was make his finger bleed. It didn't actually waver him or injure his body of Wei. At this point, Feng Ru's aura was still terrifying, and the small world continued to circle him. The lights of the great paths of the skies streamed into the small world and resonated with it, contending with the divine might of the celestial stars. Princess Donghuang looked toward the figure high up in the sky and said, "I gave you a chance before. Now I'm giving you another chance. Follow me back to the imperial palace. If you are not directly related to him, we'll close one eye and stop chasing after you. But if you continue to be stubborn..." As she paused, her eyes turned cold, and her aura became dangerously sharp. She then continued, "You will die here." As she finished speaking, several figures walked out from behind her. Their mighty aura subdued that of even the celestial skies. Every one of them was an apex cultivator, and their terrifying auras could be sensed from miles away. Feng Ru levitated again. Divine lights surrounded him as his might fired up into the skies. The hearts of the divine prefecture cultivators trembled. That was the princess of the divine prefecture, and the only daughter of Donghuang the Great. So what if Yi Futian was an unmatched genius? He was lucky that the princess was willing to give him a chance to follow her back to the imperial palace to clear up the issue. If Yi Futian didn't comply, that would mean that he had lied to her. If that were the case, she could kill her then and there. Leaving him alive would serve no purpose. He could even betray them and join the other worlds in the future. Princess Donghuang's words made many of the divine prefecture forces that had a grudge with Yi Futian laugh inside. Yi Futian was way too confident. He even dared to start a war with the imperial palace. If that wasn't a death wish, then what was? No place in the divine prefecture could accommodate him at this point. Even his attempt this time to escape into the crevices of space, to hide away from the divine prefecture, was futile. The cultivators here could travel across worlds to chase after him, so there's no way he could escape. And if he left the celestial region, he would die even faster. Without borrowing power from the celestial skies, cultivators on the level of Feng Ru could easily deal with him. He could take Yi Futian's life with a snap of his finger. They were of a fundamentally different level. The expression of the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the Ziwei Segmentum all changed. They all felt a sense of despair when Princess Donghuang gave the kill order. Was there really no hope for Yi Futian? How did things become like this? At this point, it was as if every way was leading to a dead end. The cultivators from the other worlds all sneered inside. Yi Futian came out of nowhere and made a name for himself with his unparalleled talents. They even thought that a phenom of the era was about to rise from the land of the divine prefecture, which would become a threat to them. It was especially so for the Dark World, who had battled Yi Futian several times before. A powerful aura started to engulf the skies above Yi Futian, as waves of dark divine lights started spreading towards there. The divine prefecture imperial palace cultivators frowned. Then they saw the cultivators of the Dark World arriving. They turned out to be from the Dark Court. The leading figure's aura was especially terrifying. It was an apex-level cultivator as well. He was dressed in all black, and a terrifying aura of obliteration surrounded him. Princess Donghuang looked toward them. What were the people of the Dark Court doing here? Donghuang the Great was the prodigy of an era, and met no opponent in his time. He spurred the great prosperity of the divine prefecture. Such an incredible being. I'm sure he wouldn't actually want to pick on the younger generation. Even if Yi Futian was related to Emperor Yi Qing, Emperor Yi Qing had already passed on. I'm sure that Donghuang the Great would remember their friendship and let some things go instead of taking out his grudge on a young boy. The cultivator from the Dark Court said. This caused those from the divine prefecture to show a strange expression. The Dark Court wanted to protect Yi Futian? They quickly realized what was happening. The Dark Court had some conflict with Yi Futian. If that had happened before this, naturally, they would want Yi Futian dead instead of him becoming their enemy. But now, knowing that Yi Futian could be related to Emperor Yi Qing, and that the divine prefecture imperial palace even took action to kill him, the Dark Court instead wanted Yi Futian to stay alive. But as a result, wouldn't that enlarge the conflict between Yi Futian and the divine prefecture? Naturally, that was the situation they wanted to see happen. I thought so too, of course. Donghuang the Great wouldn't take things out on a youngster. A cultivator from the empty divine realm stepped forward as well. Under the celestial skies, what was happening now seemed rather odd. Back then, Yi Futian stood on the side of the divine prefecture in a war with the dark world and the empty divine realm, and they had even won the war for them. What was this supposed to be now? The divine prefecture imperial palace wanted to kill Yi Futian, and the dark world and the empty divine realm came to protect him instead. That was certainly interesting. The cultivators of the two worlds didn't stand out just now. They must have been waiting for the relationship between Yi Futian and the divine prefecture to deteriorate completely. Only when Princess Donghuang gave the order to eliminate Yi Futian did they actually step out. You have no right to meddle in the divine prefecture's business, Princess Donghuang said coldly as her gaze swept across the cultivators from the two groups. The original realm doesn't belong to any single organization today. We've mentioned this before. Perhaps it is time to revise the division of the original realm. Yi Futian is a cultivator of the original realm, and we think he won't belong to the divine prefecture or be a subordinate of the princess. So what right does that give princess to decide his fate? The cultivator from the Dark Court continued. Just then, Yu Sheng led his group to step forward as well. As such, the devil world seemed to be protecting Yi Futian too. This made Feng Ru frown, as there were actually 3 worlds intervening now. They all wanted to stop them from killing Yi Futian. Just then, another group of cultivators arrived from the skies, but they walked toward Princess Donghuang. The auras of these cultivators exuded justice and righteousness, and each of them had an outstanding temperament. They were cultivators from the human realm. One of the cultivators came before Princess Donghuang and said softly, "Princess, past matters have already been settled, and now they are all just the past. Surely an unparalleled figure like Donghuang the Great wouldn't fuss over things of the past. Why should the princess care about a mere Renhuang plain cultivator? I'm afraid that could even affect the great emperor's reputation. How about we just leave him be?" Unexpectedly, the human realm was standing up for Yi Futian as well. However, they seemed to be coming from a slightly different standpoint. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2402, Dialogue with the Great Emperor. Chapter 2402, Dialogue with the Great Emperor. Except for the Divine Prefecture, the cultivators across various worlds were pleading on Yi Futian's behalf. What was happening now seemed a little strange. Even Yi Futian himself looked puzzled above the sky. The Dark World and the Empty Divine Realm were both principalities that had grievances against him, while he had never had many interactions with the human realm. On the contrary, the human realm was closer to the imperial palace in the Divine Prefecture. But now they were advocating on his behalf. No doubt, the Dark World and the Empty Divine Realm each have their own schemes, while the human realm seemed to be more concerned with the reputation of Donghuang the Great. As for the specific thoughts behind the action of each principality, it was something that only they know. Now, the problem was left in the hands of Princess Donghuang. She saw the situation unfolding in front of her. Those radiant, beautiful eyes of hers looked at Yi Futian above the sky as she said coldly, "Yi Futian violated the order of the imperial palace, and this is impertinent enough to declare war. It is an unforgivable offense." Princess Donghuang pressed too hard. "Isn't it normal that others would resist under such circumstances?" The top figures from the dark court said casually, seemingly taking Yi Futian's side. Judging from their posture, it seemed as if they were ready to intervene by force, in order to prevent the people from the divine prefecture from taking action. Feng Ru levitated into the air, and the cultivators from the dark court and the empty divine realm were also standing in the vicinity, ready to battle at a moment's notice. "If you insist on interfering in the matters of the divine prefecture, I will have no choice but to ask my father to adjudicate," Princess Donghuang said indifferently. Everyone who heard her narrowed their eyes slightly. Asking Donghuang the Great to adjudicate? Divine light dazzled upon Princess Donghuang, and a terrifying divine might was released from her. In an instant, the divine light seemed to spill down from the sky, penetrating through the starry sky world, as if from the outer world. As this divine light enveloped this boundless space, an inordinately strong emperor's might effused from Princess Donghuang. Yonder an elusive figure appeared. Clearly, it was not Donghuang the Great, but a projection of the great emperor onto the world. At this moment, cultivators from all sides, no matter who they were, lowered their heads and said, "Greetings to Donghuang the Great." "Greetings, great emperor," others said. Even most of the cultivators from the dark court, the empty divine realm, and the devil world saluted the great emperor to show their respect. Although they were on the opposing side, the great emperor was a supreme existence, and they were not opponents of Donghuang the Great in any way. In the presence of such supreme existence, even if they were hostiles, they still had to observe the necessary formalities. The phantom did not speak, but looked at Yi Futian, who was above the starry sky. Yi Futian's heart trembled when he saw that figure. Once, he had seen the afterimage of Donghuang the Great on Sky Mountain. This time, it seemed that he was closer. He didn't expect that the great emperor would visit the original realm in person because of him. Feng Ru stepped aside and bowed, leaving it to Donghuang the Great to decide. Donghuang the Great kept his eyes on Yi Futian, which made Yi Futian feel an inexplicable coercion. Those eyes were so profound that he could not fathom any emotions within them. "It's pretty impressive for you to obtain the inheritance of Ziwei the Great until this day," Donghuang the Great said. "This is a feat worthy of being his successor." The words of Donghuang the Great shocked all the cultivators who heard him. The great emperor had spoken and personally stated Yi Futian's identity. He was indeed the heir of Emperor Yi Qing. No wonder. Yi Futian didn't quite understand everything. Maybe he could be considered half an heir of Emperor Yi Qing, but he was far from being his successor. They had met just that one time, but Emperor Yi Qing knew of his true identity. But could Donghuang the Great really be in the dark about who he really was, even confusing him with the successor of Emperor Yi Qing? Great Emperor, so many years have passed since the events of yesteryear. Perhaps the great emperor already left those things behind. The top cultivator from the human realm spoke with lowered head. Donghuang the Great glanced at the speaker, but did not say a word. He continued to stare at Yi Futian. At this moment, another astonishing aura descended from above, which alarmed everyone present. Another super powerful aura. Who could it be? Donghuang. A voice was heard from the sky, and the crowd looked in the direction where the voice came from. A space-time passage seemed to have opened above the firmament. An image appeared at the end of the passage. It appeared to be a simple courtyard with a figure sitting quietly in the middle of it. The figure was looking in their direction. An endless distance separated them. Many people were shocked beyond words. How far away was this person? "Teacher, it's been a long time." Donghuang the Great looked at the figure in the courtyard and talked to him from across the air. That figure, surprisingly, was the teacher of Four Corner Village. "Indeed, it has been many years," the teacher said. "I still remember when you first came to the village once upon a time. Many years later, Yi Futian came as well, and I felt some similarities between the two of you. Specifically, that you are one of a kind." I didn't know the teacher holds him in such high regard. Donghuang the Great said. No wonder he was selected. This young lad is really not bad. Perhaps in the future, he might have the opportunity to chase in your footsteps, the teacher continued. But Donghuang the Great smiled when he heard these words and said, Since the teacher sees it this way, I am also curious now to see how far this lad can go in the future. Well, if so, I won't say more. If you have the time, come and visit the village sometimes, said the teacher. Definitely, Donghuang the Great nodded. Then the divine light retracted as the passageway disappeared along with the teacher's figure, which had now disappeared from the imagery. Everything returned to normal. It was as if everything that had just happened was an illusion, that nothing had really transpired. But it was also real. Was the dialogue between two great emperors real? From beginning to end, the teacher had never begged Donghuang the Great to spare Yi Futian. It was more like a casual chat between two old friends. However, these few random words seemed to have determined Yi Futian's fate. They could see that Donghuang the Great had agreed to let Yi Futian go. The teacher said that perhaps Yi Futian could walk in his footsteps. And Donghuang the Great said that was something he would like to see. As the world knew, Donghuang the Great was an unparalleled character. Emperor Yi Qing had already perished. Would Donghuang the Great care about a young lad? The great emperor who had suppressed an entire era was such a mighty existence. Would he be afraid of a young lad who might threaten him? Of course not. He was Donghuang the Great. You can handle the matters here yourself. Donghuang the Great left with one last command, then looked at Yi Futian one last time. His figure gradually dissipated. Afterward, it was as if he had never appeared in the first place. The last sentence was clearly addressing Princess Donghuang, telling her to conclude the matter at hand. Clearly, he did not intend to take action against Yi Futian himself. Phew! At this moment, the Heavenly Mandate Academy and other cultivators let out a deep breath. Was this over now? At the end of the day, they never expected that cultivators from all the worlds would stand up to protect Yi Futian, or that the teacher from Four Corner Village would have opened up a channel to start a dialogue with Donghuang the Great, so that Yi Futian's life could be spared. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2403, Life After Catastrophe. Chapter 2403, Life After Catastrophe. Donghuang the Great had decided not to take action against Yi Futian, which meant that the imperial palace of the Divine Prefecture would no longer pose a threat to Yi Futian. Everyone had thought that Yi Futian was a dead man for sure, but they never expected such a dramatic turn of events. What would Princess Donghuang do next? Yi Futian was considered very powerful in the original realm. Although he was far from capable of contending alone with the many forces in the Divine Prefecture, in one-on-one situations, there was no single force below the level of Ancient God Clan that Yi Futian couldn't overcome. Counting in the strength from the Lost Clan, then even the Ancient God Clan was no competition. No one was off-limit, given the power controlled by Yi Futian. Even the Ancient God Clan might even be suppressed. Yi Futian had been confirmed as the successor of Emperor Yi Qing, thus making him an enemy of the Imperial Palace and Divine Prefecture by default. Would Princess Donghuang allow him to continue developing his own power freely? But Donghuang the Great had already said that he wanted to see where Yi Futian could go in the future. Clearly he didn't care. How could a great emperor, unparalleled in the world, possibly be afraid of a young lad? In the many years that had passed, how many great emperors such as Donghuang the Great had come to pass in this world? Everyone's attention was fixed on Princess Donghuang. She was looking at Yi Futian above the firmament right now and proclaimed, "From this day forward, principalities belonging to Yi Futian will no longer be ruled by the Divine Prefecture. Ziwei Segmentum may make a choice, same as the various forces currently under the rule of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. As for the Lost Clan, which had already agreed to submit under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Palace, it may no longer be involved with Yi Futian henceforth." Once, when all the forces laid siege upon the Lost Clan, she came forward and saved them. The agreement was for the Lost Clan to accept the Imperial Palace and Divine Prefecture and submit to its rule. Given this condition, they could no longer ally with Yi Futian. If the alliance with Yi Futian were to continue, they would lose protection from the imperial palace. As for the Ziwei segmentum, it was left by Ziwei the Gria, and was never intended as a principality that belonged to the divine prefecture. Likewise, the Heavenly Mandate Academy consisted mostly of relationships developed by Yi Futian. Therefore, Princess Donghuang allowed them to make their own choices. However, among the two forces outside of the Lost Clan, the will of Ziwei the Great had long resonated with Yi Futian, and because of that, the Ziwei segmentum would probably never escape his control. The Heavenly Mandate Academy was one with Yi Futian for so long that it was simply impossible for it ever to betray him. We have been entrusted by Ziwei the Great to do his bidding. The Palace Lord, once obtained the inheritance of Ziwei the Great, became the Palace Lord of the Ziwei Imperial Palace, and took charge of the Ziwei segmentum. This is the will of Ziwei the Great, and those who cultivate in the Ziwei segmentum must heed it. We hope the princess will understand, Ren Huangchen explained. The Heavenly Mandate Academy was built by Yi Futian single-handedly. Without Yi Futian, the Heavenly Mandate Academy would not have been possible. I hope the princess will forgive us. Lord Taixian of the Heavenly Mandate Academy also spoke up. There was no doubt that they were willing to stand by Yi Futian. We were never part of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. We ended up there only after being threatened by Yi Futian to submit. Now we are willing to serve the princess, said a dissenting voice. It was none other than the college chief of the former Tianqian Academy, Jianao. That's right. We were forced by Yi Futian to be part of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, and now we are willing to serve the princess, said another voice. All those remnant forces from the 9 realms that had surrendered to the Heavenly Mandate Academy now seized their chance to rebel. The current situation was turbulent, to say the least. Following Princess Donghuang and serving the imperial palace directly was the way to survive in these troubled times. Yi Futian had now offended the imperial palace in the divine prefecture beyond repair. His own safety was in jeopardy, and he would have to watch his back at all times. They were no fools, so they knew how to choose. Shameless beasts, Sky River Great Elder rebuked coldly. Instead of killing them back then, their lives had been spared, and they were given a chance to surrender. They never expected them to change their tunes so quickly and decisively now. But Yi Futian, who was still above the sky, didn't feel quite that way. Betrayal was commonplace for these people, and he didn't really care. Emperor Yi Qing was once his greatest secret. Now that it had been revealed, it was fortunate for him to be able to survive the revelation of such news. He had been worried about a day like this for a very long time, and didn't know what outcome to expect. The situation at the moment was far better than what he had ever imagined. This was supposed to be a catastrophe. Very good. Princess Donghuang nodded and continued. After you return, report to the empty imperial palace. Yes, princess. Everyone bowed and nodded, greatly overjoyed in their hearts. It was a stroke of good luck to be rid of Yi Futian and follow the imperial palace. The teacher and my father are old acquaintances. For the sake of the teacher, I will no longer pursue the matters from today. Princess Donghuang looked at Yi Futian, who was high above the sky. She then turned around and looked into the distance as she continued. From this day forward, Yi Futian is no longer under the jurisdiction of the imperial palace in the divine prefecture. All your grievances are yours to resolve independently. In addition, the teacher has already made his stance known today. Since my father has decided not to interfere with his affairs, the teacher will no longer interfere with ours in the future. The words of Princess Donghuang couldn't be more clear to those cultivators from the various forces of the divine prefecture. Those who had been enemies with Yi Futian snickered in their hearts and understood the significance of the princess's words. This was no less than a declaration of open season on Yi Futian. What she meant was that the teacher from Four Corner Village could no longer stop them. It seemed that the princess was pretty upset about what has transpired today. After all, Yi Futian openly resisted the imperial order and defied her. In addition, as the only daughter of Donghuang the Great, and with Yi Futian being the successor of Emperor Yi Qing, the two of them were destined to be enemies fateful opponents. Therefore, it was completely reasonable for Princess Dong Huang to harbor some grudges toward Yi Futian. The cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy did not look so good. From now on, the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture would have no more worries about the future. Now, without the Lost Clan, Yi Futian's strength would be greatly reduced. Once he left the Ziwei segmentum, he might be hunted by the forces from the Divine Prefecture. Yi Futian was still in control of the Ziwei cultivation court, as well as the inheritance of several great emperors. Now there was Emperor Yi Qing on top of everything else, so there was no telling how many others would covet what was in Yi Futian's possession. Let's go. After having said that, Princess Donghuang gave the order to leave. The cultivators from the Imperial Palace of Divine Prefecture left with her, just as suddenly as she had spoken. People from other top principalities in the Divine Prefecture left with her as well. Without Princess Donghuang here, none of them dared to dawdle any longer in the Ziwei segmentum. After all, this was the territory controlled by Yi Futian, and in it, even those who had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path couldn't best him. If Yi Futian wished to hurt them, it could be very bad for them. With shining rays of light, cultivators from all sides withdrew. Soon, those who cultivated in the Divine Prefecture disappeared altogether. Cultivators from the human realm left along with them as well. However, the cultivators from the Dark World and the empty Divine Realm were still there. At this time, the leader of the Dark World looked at Yi Futian and said, "Although there were some grievances between Renhuang Yi and us, if Renhuang Yi is willing to enter the Dark Court to cultivate, we will not take any action. Instead, we will protect Renhuang Yi from the persecution of the Divine Prefecture. The empty Divine Realm welcomes you as well." The cultivators from two major worlds were not just actively recruiting Yi Futian, but were offering to put aside the many grievances that had appeared between them over the years. This was in spite of the fact that Yi Futian had killed many cultivators of the Dark World. He was the successor of Emperor Yi Qing. He was tremendously talented, and he had a great emperor standing behind him to boot. He was way too valuable of an asset. The point was that Yi Futian and the Imperial Palace in the Divine Prefecture were now on opposing sides. And because of Emperor Yi Qing, they would be mortal enemies with no possibility of reconciliation. If Yi Futian could be groomed as a weapon to be used against the Divine Prefecture one day, why pass up such a great opportunity? Future prospects aside, even Yi Futian now was already a prize with the strength he possessed and the power he controlled. Yi Futian glanced briefly at the cultivators from these two major worlds. Obviously, he understood their intentions quite well, so he responded without hesitation. "Both of you have spoken up for me today. If something unforeseen happens in the future, I will remember what occurred today." Clearly, this was a soft letdown. "In that case, we will be leaving now." They didn't say anything more. They would be watching how Yi Futian planned to engage with the principalities from the Divine Prefecture. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2404, Abandoned. Chapter 2404. Abandoned. After the various forces left, Yi Futian descended from the starry sky. The sky was reconstructed, and the starry dimension disappeared. Myriads of stars disappeared from the sight of the crowd along with the silhouette of Ziwei the Great. Yi Futian landed in Ziwei Imperial Palace. Yuxing came up behind him. The cultivators of Ziwei Imperial Palace and the Heavenly Mandate Academy all gathered around him. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief now that this ordeal had come to an end. However, they still couldn't put their worries to rest completely since danger was still lurking. Right now they were besieged on all sides. They had even offended the Imperial Palace of the Divine Prefecture. The forces from the Divine Prefecture would no longer have any scruple about attacking Yi Futian and his allies. The former might even join forces to attack them. Of course, their prerequisite was that Yi Futian and his group left the Ziwei segmentum. After all, if they chose to attack Yi Futian in the Ziwei segmentum, they had to be prepared to face annihilation. A gentle breeze blew past, and everyone felt a bit chilly. The cultivators stared at Yi Futian silently. Their journey from now on would most likely be arduous. The various worlds were in chaos, and they were trapped here, with a slim chance of breaking out of this predicament in a short time. "We will temporarily abandon the Heavenly Mandate Academy," announced Yi Futian. Immediately, all the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy were overwhelmed with sorrow. They had formed deep bonds with the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Unfortunately, they were forced to abandon it now. Yi Futian instructed, "Lord Taishian, please make a trip to the Heavenly Mandate Academy and make arrangements for the cultivators who are still in the lower worlds to come to the Ziwei segmentum. Then, please destroy the teleportation Grand Matrix." Lord Taishian nodded. He was aware that in doing so, they would completely sever the connection between the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the Ziwei segmentum, abandoning their base at the Heavenly Mandate Academy. All these years, Yi Futian had contributed a lot to the Heavenly Mandate realm and the original realm. He had even been crowned the ruler of the original realm. However, the continual arrival of various forces in the original realm messed up the situation. This recent ordeal further complicated things. Everything had changed. Yi Futian was kicked out of the game. He was but an outsider now. He had to desert his base at the Heavenly Mandate realm and leave the original realm temporarily. Nobody here questioned Yi Futian's motive in doing so. All of them were aware that he was forced to make such a decision. The current Heavenly Mandate Academy was a dangerous place to be in. If they chose to remain in the lower worlds, they would be attacked at any moment. They would naturally not leave behind the teleportation Grand Matrix for their enemies to use. After the rest of their members from the Academy arrived, they had to destroy the Matrix. Lord Taishian swiftly led others to carry out the plan. Yi Futian said, "Right now the original realm has undergone major changes. Cultivators from various worlds had come to the realm. However, all these things do not concern us now. In the coming years, we can only stay and cultivate in the Ziwei segmentum. Fortunately, there is the Starry Cultivation Court, which was left by Ziwei the Great. It is very beneficial for our cultivation. I'll meditate in the Starry Cultivation Court for a period of time. At the same time, I'll help everyone here with your cultivation too." Prior to this, he had quite a few allies from the Divine Prefecture. However, after today's incident, they had left him. After all the forces in the Divine Prefecture were under the command of the Donghuang Imperial Palace. Who would dare go against the Donghuang Imperial Palace and support him? Yi Futian himself also did not wish for his friends to do so. If they did so, they would be dragged into this murky mess. "For you, increasing your cultivation plane is indeed the most important matter now," said Emperor Nan. Yi Futian was currently a 7th tier Renhuang. If he cultivated to the 9th tier and relied on the power of the starry sky in battle, even cultivators of Feng Ru's level would not be able to withstand his attacks. Even if he did not do so, once he cultivated to the peak of the Renhuang Plain and relied on the sacred remains of Xinjia the Great Emperor and the divine Guqin of Shinin the Great, Yi Futian would also certainly be able to unleash even more terrifying might. When the time came, he would no longer be restricted wherever he went. At least when he was against some super powerful cultivators, he would have more power to defend himself. However, the matters of the outside world did not concern them now. "Do you want to cultivate in the Devil World?" Yuxing asked Yi Futian. If Yi Futian went to the Devil World, he would not be restricted by others. Yi Futian shook his head. Over transmitted thoughts he said to Yusheng, "Only we know what happened back then. Now our identities are unclear. The Devil World might have accepted you, because your identity is special. However, it is different for me. No matter what I do, I will need to be more cautious." Yuxing did not say anything. He understood that what Yi Futian said was correct. Only the two of them knew what had happened back then. Yi Futian was never considered an heir of Emperor Yi Qing. Yu Sheng's father had been the one who raised Yi Futian. However, he did not teach Yi Futian any cultivation techniques. He only said that Yi Futian was born an emperor. As for Yu Sheng, he would become Yi Futian's support. Hence, Yi Futian's identity was definitely not what the outside world imagined it to be. It was not as simple as him being the heir of Emperor Yi Qing. Besides that, the way the Devil Emperor treated Yu Sheng, as well as the fact that the Devil Emperor was unwilling to tell Yu Sheng his identity, made him suspicious about his own origins. Yi Futian continued advising Yu Sheng. Yu Sheng, although I am restricted now, you are from the devil world so that no one will dare touch you. You can still train in the outside world. The original realm has undergone a huge change, and there are various fateful encounters out there. You can venture out and explore with the various cultivators from the devil world to see whether you can claim some fateful encounters for yourself. Yu Sheng nodded his head slightly. A cold look flashed past in his eyes as he said, I will investigate those who spread the rumors. Yu Sheng clearly wanted to get back at them. They had ulterior motives for intentionally spreading rumors claiming Yi Futian was related to Emperor Yi Qing. They wanted Yi Futian dead. For now, don't get into large-scale conflicts with the forces of the Divine Prefecture. Both of us need to keep a low profile. When we are sufficiently powerful in the future, we will not need to worry about being unable to seek revenge, said Yi Futian. Yu Sheng was somewhat unsatisfied, but he still nodded his head. However, he thought to himself that if he encountered the members of the Divine Prefecture, when he was searching for fateful encounters outside, he would not show them mercy. Yi Futian glanced around at the other cultivators and said, I am sorry to have troubled all of you with this. Palace Lord, we have been cultivating in the Ziwei segmentum all this while. Now, you have opened up the cultivation court of Ziwei the Great for us. How can this be considered trouble? Said Renhuang Chen. Xiao Dingtian from the Xiao clan said, The Heavenly Mandate Academy originally rose to prominence because of you. If it weren't for you, whether or not we would be able to survive until today in this chaotic world would be up for debate. How can this be considered trouble? The Ziwei segmentum is much larger than the 9 realms. It's pretty nice to cultivate here. Others also spoke up. Although their current situation was frustrating, recalling everything that had happened, they knew that Yi Futian had already done good enough as he led them forward. It is good to cultivate in seclusion for some time. We can improve our abilities, added Emperor Nan. They would most likely need to cultivate for quite some time. For the foreseeable future, they would not be leaving this place. Donghuang the Great promised to not meddle in your affairs. Once you overcome the divine tribulation, nothing will be able to stop you from going wherever you want, said Fang Gai. He seemed to be comforting Yi Futian. I understand, said Yi Futian as he nodded his head. He glanced over the familiar faces around him. He felt a sense of warmth well up inside him. He still had so many friends standing beside him and supporting him. He had no right to be decadent and slack. In the Heavenly Mandate realm of the original realm, news of the war in the Ziwei segmentum spread. Lord Taixian led all of the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy away, and then destroyed the teleportation Grand Matrix. After that, the cultivators from various forces descended upon the Heavenly Mandate realm and occupied the ruins of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. They also began to conquer the Heavenly Mandate City. All the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate realm felt a sense of sadness over this incident. Had the figure of their faith left the Heavenly Mandate realm just like that? He had actually been dealt with by the Imperial Palace. An era had ended. The era of Yi Futian was ended by the Imperial Palace. No one knew what the fate of the Heavenly Mandate realm would be. Now the cultivators here were at the mercy of the other forces. There would most likely be no one like Yi Futian, whose core tenet was to protect the Heavenly Mandate realm. At the moment, around the ruins of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, many cultivators had gathered. They were from all corners of the Heavenly Mandate realm. An old man had brought along a youth. When the old man saw the scene before him, he sighed. Grandfather, has something happened to Renhuang Yi? Then, who will protect the Heavenly Mandate realm in the future? The youth asked as he looked at the ruins. No, Renhuang Yi has only left temporarily. He will return in the future, replied the old man. However, how many years would it be before the hope of the Heavenly Mandate realm returned? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2405, Seclusion. Chapter 2405. Seclusion. All the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy had migrated to the Ziwei Segmentum. Yi Futian ordered them to build a new Heavenly Mandate Academy in Ziwei Imperial, the main city of the Ziwei Segmentum. This allowed the disciples of the academy, who followed him all the way here, to have a place for meditation. This would hopefully make up for their loss. At the same time, the core members of the academy could enter Ziwei Imperial Palace freely. Besides that, they were allowed to use the palace, and even the starry cultivation court for cultivation. Everything proceeded in an orderly manner. After Yi Futian had decided to go into seclusion, he planned to sever the Ziwei Segmentum from the original realm. For the next few years, they would quietly cultivate here and stop caring about the matters outside. However, several days later, Yuxing still brought them some news. It was related to the forces involved in spreading the rumors back then. The ancient god clan from the Divine Prefecture was not involved. Instead, the forces involved were the top forces from the Divine Prefecture. On top of that, the Sheng clan, Nanhai family, the Shangqing Domain Chief's Manor, and the Donghua Domain Chief's Manor had participated too. After these forces learned of the news, they spread it around immediately, ensuring that Princess Donghuang got wind of it. Actually, Princess Donghuang had known about it beforehand. However, she was forced to meddle in the affair by coming to Ziwei Imperial Palace directly after the news had been spread around. Yi Futian did nothing after learning the truth, but he kept a list of the forces involved in his mind. The vendetta between the Sheng clan and him stemmed from what happened between him and the Sheng clan of the original realm in the past. His grudges with the Donghua Domain Chief's Manor went without saying. However, he was surprised that the Shangqing Domain Chief's Manor was involved in this too. Even though there was some friction between them, Yi Futian had not expected that the other party would want him dead. From the looks of it, there were indeed many people in the Divine Prefecture who wished for his death. The ones that he knew were only the forces that made their goal apparent. Many other enemies wanted to kill him. Yi Futian did not put much thought into this matter. Now that the ordeal was over, he did not have much to worry about since Hua Jiyu had returned to his side, and he had met Yusheng. Yi Futian could fully concentrate on cultivating in peace. In the starry cultivation court of Ziwei Imperial Palace, there were many cultivators around. After Yi Futian entered the court, he raised his head and glanced at the endless stars in the sky. Hua Jiyu stood beside him quietly. She followed him here, and they prepared to cultivate together for a period of time. Jiyu, the teachings of the great emperor that you acquired are a little bizarre. During our seclusion this time, I want to work on other aspects aside from improving our cultivation planes. We can rely on each other's cultivation to deepen our understanding of the art of cultivating, Yi Futian said gently. There were no secrets between him and Hua Jiyu. The two of them would share what they had mastered separately, so that they could improve together. Hua Jiyu nodded in agreement. I agree. However, this time, we might need to cultivate for a long time. I'm afraid that it will be quite boring, Yi Futian said while staring at her lovingly. We have been apart for decades. There was nothing more painful than our separation. With you by my side now, how could I possibly feel bored? Hua Jiyu replied softly. The two of them exchanged a glance and smiled. Then their figures flashed, and they dashed towards the stars. A lot of people were staring at their silhouettes. Some were envious of their relationship, while some wished for their happiness. After going through countless challenges, the two could finally be with each other now. Even though we have just experienced a huge disaster, it might be a blessing in disguise. Fortune and misfortune are two sides of the same coin, after all. Little brother got rid of one of his worries, and can now focus on cultivating. He has Jiyu by his side now too. It can be said that his current situation is rather perfect. Zhuge Mingyue and Gu Donglu stood side by side in the sky, as they looked at Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu. A glint of joy flashed in Zhuge Mingyue's eyes as she said this. Gu Donglu nodded and said, Jiyu has been little brother's concern for all these years. Now he can finally rest his worry and cultivate quietly for a few years. Unfortunately, someone else has to suffer. Zhuge Mingyue sighed while smiling wryly. Gu Donglu looked towards a spot down below upon hearing her words. He saw a beautiful silhouette sitting and meditating there quietly. However, she looked somewhat lonely. In the starry sky above, Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu went to the highest spot. Then, they sat cross-legged in the high heavens, while the rest of the cultivators were cultivating down below. Not long after, all the stars lit up. Endless starlight shone on Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu, causing them to glimmer. At the same time, the entire starry cultivation court grew even brighter. Endless starlight rained down, allowing the cultivators beneath to also sense the aura hidden in this place. They could particularly sense the powerful auras hidden in the imperial stars, as they were showered in starlight. Lord Taixian, Sky River Great Elder, Emperor Nan, Old Ma, and many other cultivators looked at the two silhouettes in the starry sky. Yi Futian was the embodiment of all their hopes. The future of all the cultivators present here depended on him. Lord Taixian and the elders knew that they had little hope of turning the tide themselves. Aside from Yi Futian, most of his companions had also inherited the teachings of the great emperors. Yi Futian, along with Yu Sheng, Hua Jiyu, and Gu Donglu, were the future of this starry world. However, they first needed some time. Yi Futian and the others began cultivating in seclusion in the starry cultivation court of Ziwei Imperial Palace. Meanwhile, in the original realm, storms were stirring up again. The cultivators of the various worlds were fighting over the fateful encounters that appeared. Regardless if they were relics in the heavenly mandate realm, or those that appeared in the original realm, all of them were being fought over by the various cultivators. The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture, the Dark World, the Empty Divine Realm, the Human Realm, and the Devil World were in constant friction with each other. Many small-scale conflicts erupted between them. However, they were still cautious towards one another. Therefore, no large-scale battles had occurred. However, the Dark World and the Empty Divine Realm were always ready to move. They wanted to attack the Divine Prefecture many times. Yet the Human Realm seemed to lean towards siding with the Divine Prefecture. Hence, these two major worlds had yet to seize the opportunity to start a divine war. The original realm was still changing rapidly. This was also one of the reasons why the war had yet to erupt. The various forces wanted to pillage more relics to increase their power. For now, no one wanted to face each other head-on. Yet, as time passed and there were more and more conflicts between them, many cultivators ended up perishing. At the same time, the monstrous Renhuangs with exceptional talent were developing more rapidly than before. However, all this seemed unrelated to Yi Futian's group. After several years, in the starry cultivation court of Ziwei Imperial Palace, many cultivators were still cultivating inside. They did not involve themselves with matters of the outside world. They were considered the only top force within the original realm that had not participated in the conflict. Right then, many people looked up high in the sky. Up in the starry sky, many illusory figures appeared. They were all silhouettes of Yi Futian. They seemed to be everywhere, and each one was as real as the original. Buzz! Beams of sword light shot across and illuminated the starry sky. The various silhouettes stabbed out at the same time in tens of thousands of permutations. Yi Futian was obviously comprehending swordsmanship. Many people were watching from below as he practiced. Everyone seemed to have their own comprehension of what they saw. These past years, aside from comprehending the Great Path and increasing his cultivation plane, Yi Futian also trained in attack techniques. He cultivated a myriad of techniques, many of which were powerful divine techniques passed down from the great emperors. However, since they were not his own power, he could not unleash their full potential. Hence, he needed to rely on his own ability to comprehend the techniques again, in order to better utilize them. He then had to merge them, using his powers of the Great Path to make them even stronger. These years, the cultivators in the starry cultivation court witnessed Yi Futian's growth. It was not just Yi Futian. The others were also improving. As the years passed, the outside world changed swiftly without cease. Only within the starry cultivation court did time seem to stop. 10 years felt like a day. Just like that, more than 10 years went by. It seemed to have passed like the snap of one's fingers. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2406, Traveling Far. Chapter 2406. Traveling Far. It was the year 10080 on the Divine Prefecture calendar, and the 80th year of cultivation for Yi Futian. That day, under the starry night sky, Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu were bathing under the starlight. Both of their auras were rich and strong, their bodies shined magnificently, and divine light encircled them. Their planes had become deeper. Yi Futian had reached the 8th level Renhuang plane. Just one more level, and he would be at the peak of the Renhuang plane. As for Hua Jiyu, she had already reached the 9th plane, after inheriting the Brahma's pure sky empress's cultivation, and her millions of incarnations. In the ensuing years, she had been stabilizing her cultivation plane, only deepening it when she found the inheritance of a great emperor. Hua Jiyu had now truly reached peak 9th level, and was entering a bottleneck. If she went up just one more step, she would encounter the 3 tribulations. Both of them stopped cultivating. As they watched the numerous figures cultivating under the starlight, all sorts of feelings and thoughts welled up in their hearts. More than 10 years. It's my first time cultivating for such a long time, Yi Futian said softly. He'd never cultivated continuously for so long. But this time, he was forced to do so as he had to raise his power level. Dangers lurked everywhere out there, and many wanted him dead, forcing him to focus on strengthening his powers. Hua Jiyu nodded lightly. It was her first time cultivating for so long as well. Being under this starry sky, and bathing under the divine might of a great emperor, helped with gaining deeper understandings, which made it very suitable for cultivation. It's already year 10080 of the Divine Prefecture calendar, and I'm reaching 100 years old soon. Time flies. Yi Futian smiled as he spoke. Yeah, same for me. Hua Jiyu smiled as well as she looked toward Yi Futian. They had known each other when it was year 10,000 on the Divine Prefecture calendar. Back then they were still teenagers. Now they were almost 100 years old. It did make one feel a little sentimental. Of course, it was extremely rare to have someone reach such a level of cultivation under 100. Their cultivation levels are rising far faster than their age, which made them both look really young. Yi Futian, with his fully white hair, still looked extraordinarily handsome, and his temperament alone would make him stand out in any crowd. He far surpassed his charm as a teenager. Hua Jiyu still looked stunningly beautiful. It was as if she was a goddess of the 9 heavens. Futian Jiyu, Zhuge Mingyue called out. Y'all haven't come down in a while. Beside her, Gu Donglio's aura was also starkly different from years ago. Not too long ago, he had reached 7th level Renhuang plane. Back then, he received an inheritance from the demon realm. Afterward, he received the inheritance of the imperial stars under this starry sky. While the opportunities he had encountered couldn't compare to Yi Futian's, it far surpassed the vast majority of cultivators in this world. Really, there were really not many who had such chances. The cultivation levels of Xiao Muyu, Dou Zhao, Nan Luoshan, and others had also increased significantly. Of course, the one who had improved the fastest was Qin Yi. Despite looking as if he never took anything seriously, there was a time when he was at a higher cultivation plane than Yi Futian. Even now, he was still on the same level as Yi Futian, reaching 8th level Renhuang plane. Since becoming acquainted with Yi Futian in the Donghua domain, this guy always had a sense of mystery surrounding him. Today, even Yi Futian felt that he couldn't see through Qin Yi entirely. Yi Futian knew that Qin Yi was the same as himself and held some secrets. But he never asked. After all, who didn't have secrets? Qin Yi had saved his life before and treated him sincerely. To him, that was sufficient. It was indeed a long cultivation session. Yi Futian smiled as he nodded. Futian, Old Ma Blind Tai, and Lord Taixian all walked over, and the group gathered together. Chief Elder, what's happening outside now? Yi Futian asked. Although he hadn't paid attention to the outside world for more than 10 years, Ran Huangchen regularly sought information from out there to be aware of the basic situation. It's chaotic out there, but many relics have surfaced. Many of the organizations had made great gains. including emperor-level inheritance. This turbulent era is the best and the worst at the same time, Ren Huangqin said. Yi Futian nodded. Opportunities tend to appear in times of chaos. But after so many years, many people had left the original realm and returned to where they came from, especially the top forces who had already obtained the relics of great emperors. They didn't dare to stay as they feared being targeted by everyone else, and they knew not to be greedy. As a result, the number of forces in the original realm has been gradually decreasing. Ren Huangqin continued. The conflicts between various worlds never stopped, but they also didn't launch an all-out war. Perhaps it isn't time yet. How about the Heavenly Mandate realm? How are they now? Yi Futian asked. The situation at the Heavenly Mandate realm isn't looking good now, Ren Huangqin said nonchalantly. Yi Futian had an idea what that meant, so he didn't ask more about it. Without the Heavenly Mandate Academy, of course the Heavenly Mandate realm wouldn't be doing well. Futian, what are your plans after this? Continue to cultivate and raise your power levels? Lord Taixian asked. Yi Futian had already reached the 8th level Renhuang Plane. Even amongst all Renhuang Plane cultivators, it would be hard to match him equally. But out there were many tribulation-level cultivators, and even terrifyingly powerful individuals like Feng Ru. They were still a little lacking if they wanted to venture out there. Amongst them, there were no apex-level cultivators to protect Yi Futian. Nope, Yi Futian shook his head. After cultivating for so many years, I feel that I'm improving at a slower rate. It must be that I'm encountering a bottleneck. Jiyu had reached peak level Renhuang Plane, and needs an opportunity to break the shackles of the Renhuang Plane. So I would like to travel far. There were still too many dangers in the original realm, so that they couldn't venture at ease. Yi Futian was actually planning to leave the original realm to travel. Travel far? The cultivators were a little startled. They asked, where? First, we'll visit the Divine Prefecture. I need to return to Four Corner Village for a bit. Afterward, perhaps we will travel to the Western world, Yi Futian answered. The Western world? A rather surprised expression appeared on the cultivators' faces. The Western world was unfamiliar to them, and all they knew was that Donghuang the Great once went there to cultivate. Why would Yi Futian want to go there? Behind the crowd, Hua Qingqing's pretty eyes showed surprise. Could it be because of her? Jiyu knew about her, so Yi Futian probably knew too, which was why he wanted to travel to the Western world. The Western world is the safest as well, relatively speaking, Yi Futian said. He had never had a conflict with the Western world before, and no one knew about his existence there. Of course, other than going out there to experience the world, it was partly because of Hua Qingqing. The cultivators nodded. Yi Futian does need to travel far this time. Master, I'll go too, Xiaomi said. And me. Dou Zhao and the others spoke up as well. They all wanted to follow Yi Futian. We don't need this many people for the trip this time. It will make us a big target, and that will make the affair rather dangerous. You guys should focus on cultivating and raising your power level to reach the peak of the Renhuang Plain as soon as possible. Yi Futian rejected their request. He didn't plan on taking a lot of people with him. Uncle Tai and I shall follow you. We can look after you, Old Ma said. Uncle Tai would be good enough. With Hua Jiyu and my current cultivation level, it's actually already sufficient. Qingqing wants to follow us. That's why we would need some extra help, Yi Futian said. Old Ma didn't say more. Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu's levels were indeed stronger than anybody else's now. Then I'll follow you guys back to the village. I haven't seen little Ling for so long, Old Ma said. Yeah, little Ling, Feng Xiyuan, and the other kids. They are probably all grown up by now. With the master teaching them cultivation, they're probably all pretty strong now. Yi Futian smiled as he said, I'll go too. It was Chen Yi. Yi Futian looked toward him. Chen Yi's cultivation level was similar to his, so it wouldn't be a problem. Since we're traveling far, before heading to the Western world, could you accompany me somewhere first? Chen Yi asked Yi Futian. It was the first time he had spontaneously asked Yi Futian to go there. Sure. Yi Futian nodded without having too many queries. He asked, Where do you want to go? Divine Prefecture, Great Bright Domain, Chen Yi answered. Great Bright Domain. A sense of astonishment appeared in Yi Futian's eyes. He turned toward Chen Yi and asked, You came from the Great Bright Domain? Chen Yi cultivated the way of light. Based on that, it was indeed possible that he had come from the Great Bright Domain. The Great Bright Domain was one of the 18 domains of the Divine Prefecture. However, this domain was unique in that it had an exceptionally glorious history. It was mysterious and ancient. But now it was said to be the most decrepit domain in the Divine Prefecture. The Great Bright Domain had been ravaged by time to the point that it didn't even have a ruler class organization. But looking into history, the Great Bright Domain was once the most glorious domain in the Divine Prefecture. Of course, back then, it wasn't even known as the Divine Prefecture. Instead, it was known as the Divine Bright Domain. Chen Yi wanted to go to the Great Bright Domain. Thank you. Chen Yi thanked Yi Futian. He appeared to be rather serious. Yi Futian immediately understood that this was likely one of Chen Yi's secrets. While he looked like he didn't take anything seriously, he was likely hiding dark secrets deep down. But why did he venture into the Donghua domain back then? When are you departing? Lord Taixian asked. In a few days. I'll visit my teachers and leave a clone of my consciousness before leaving. Would you please continue with your cultivation? There is no need to worry about me, Yi Futian said. It wasn't a huge deal, so there was no need to be so solemn. After he had made proper arrangements, he would leave straight away. The cultivators nodded. Then Yi Futian rose into the air and flew into the starry skies as a magnificent divine light erupted from him. Afterward, the stars shined as many of Yi Futian's projections appeared. Amongst them was a projection of him, sitting in a cross-legged stance under the starry sky. He looked tranquil. It was as if he were merging with the starry sky. All these years, no one came to disturb him because no one dared to do so. Yi Futian was able to control the celestial stars of the skies and borrow the will of the great emperor in battle. He was basically invincible in this segmentum. So who would be so bold to come for him? But now that he was leaving naturally, he had to make some preparations for the unpredictable. After all, he didn't know how many years this trip would take. This wasn't just traveling far in the conventional sense. He was crossing the entire world. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2407. For Youngsters. Chapter 2407. For youngsters. After Yi Futian left the Ziwei segmentum, starlight encircled the entire segmentum. If one watched the segmentum from far away in the endless space, it would be as though the whole segmentum was shrouded in starlight. Years ago, the Ziwei segmentum was sealed inside a rock. When the seal was broken, it formed the segmentum. Before Yi Futian left, he sealed the segmentum once again using Ziwei the Great's powers, and left a clone of his consciousness inside the segmentum to control the power of the seals, so it wouldn't get broken easily. Even if the seal were attacked, it would be as firm as a mountain. Only after he had done that did Yi Futian leave, feeling at ease. It was as if the whole ordeal in the original realm was unrelated to him. At that moment, he stood outside of the whole thing. At the Shangqing domain, Four Corner Village had become a flourishing holy land in the area. Some say that inside the mysterious village of Four Corner City lived a great emperor, the master of Four Corner Village. When the rumor broke out, the entire Shangqing domain erupted, and its influence even spread to the Divine Prefecture. Countless cultivators came to seek their paths from the master and wanted to enter the village. In a tavern inside Four Corner City, many cultivators had appeared here. Atop the tavern building, four young cultivators were chatting around an elegant stone table. All four of them exuded extraordinary temperaments. Below them, several people were standing in respect. There were even several among them who were of higher cultivation levels than the four. One of the four young cultivators with short hair spoke. "You can stop wasting time on us. Master won't be taking on any more students." However, since Four Corner Village had surfaced before the world, as long as you are willing to become a part of the village and focus on cultivation, You might be able to see the master someday, if your performance stands out from the rest. After speaking, he released a deep sigh inside. Every year when they came out from the village, the same thing would happen. These people didn't want to follow the rules and become the village's external force, yet they wanted to meet the master to seek paths. How is that possible? Third brother, there is no need to answer them, an extraordinarily handsome young man with long hair said. He picked up his glass and took a sip of wine. He was enjoying himself. The sarcasm in his gaze was clear as he looked toward those standing beside them. All of these people were desperate to seek results. Everyone knew what they were thinking, and he never bothered paying attention to them. Yeah, all these years, masters only taught us. What gives them the right to be accepted? The only girl among the 4 cultivators asked softly. She looked graceful and dazzling, and her aura was similarly extraordinary. Only the dark, short-haired young cultivator sat in silence. He seemed like a quiet person. Who's that? Just then, the long-haired young cultivator suddenly turned and looked into the distance. A golden divine light flashed past his eyes. The next moment, a figure appeared before the 4 of them. Instantly, all 4 of them stood up, which surprised all of the cultivators in the tavern. Who is this person? It's Blind Tai, someone said softly. Blind Tai was really famous back in the day. Now he had returned, and his aura was seriously powerful. Dad! The short-haired teen who was addressed as third brother exclaimed. He was the son of Blind Tai, Tai too. He was the little boy who had liked to follow Little Ling back then. The long-haired handsome youth was Fang Xiyuan, and the only girl was Little Ling. The quiet short-haired teen was the kid who was used to being forgotten in the village, Duo Yu. Now they had all grown up. Uncle Tai. Fang Xiyuan and Little Ling revealed surprised expressions as they stood up. Only Duo Yu stood still in silence. Come with me, Blind Tai said before he flew into the air. All 4 of the cultivators trailed behind him and flew toward the sky. Before long, they saw the 4 people waiting in front. The silver hair of the person in the middle fluttered in the wind. Excitement appeared on the faces of the 4 young cultivators. They accelerated and flew before Futian. Fang Xiyuan and Little Ling rushed up and called out to him with big smiles on their faces. Master, you're back. Master. Tai Tu scratched his head a little as a candid smile appeared on his face. Only Duo Yu didn't move, he stood where he was. He bowed toward Futian and greeted him, Master. Futian had to take a second look before he could recognize the 4 of them. The kids were now all grown up. The 4 young cultivators were overjoyed to see him, but the way they expressed it was somewhat different. Perhaps it was because of their personalities. Fang Xiyuan was probably the most lively and playful one. Futian knocked on Fang Xiyuan's head and rubbed Little Ling's head. He then looked at Tai Tu, who had a smile that looked a little silly. All 4 of them seemed to have the same personality from when they were children. Duo Yu, no need to be like this when you see me, Futian said when he saw that Duo Yu was still bowing. Duo Yu was the most pitiful kid among the 4. As an orphan, he ate from the tables of all the families in the village, and no one had cared for him. Yes, master. Duo Yu nodded before standing up straight and looking at Futian. There was a special light in his gaze as he looked at Futian. After all, his life had been changed by Futian. Although the 2 of them didn't spend that much time together, little Duo Yu, who grew up eating from other families' tables, only he knew what Futian appearing back then meant for him. 4th brother, no need to be so demure with master. Just act natural, Fang Xiyuan said, laughing a little. Futian looked at him and said, What's this? You guys ranked each other? Master, we're all your students. Of course we need to know who's the most senior, and who's the most junior. I'm big brother. Little Ling is the 2nd sister. Tai Tu is the 3rd brother. And Duo Yu is the youngest, so he's the 4th brother, Fang Xiyuan said. Futian looked at him and shook his head, though he felt warmth in his heart. This reminded him of his days cultivating in the cottage. He was the most junior back then, and all his older brothers and sisters in the cottage cared for him the most. Master, who are these 2 goddesses? Little Ling had been paying attention to Hua Jiyu and Hua Qingqing all along. Little Ling paid special attention to Hua Jiyu, who stood closely beside the master. which made her guess Hua Jiyu's identity, but she couldn't be sure. This was because back then, when Yi Futian came to the village, it was with another person. This is your masteress, and this is a friend of mine. Her name is Hua Qingqing, Yi Futian said, smiling. Little Ling was startled for a moment before a sweet smile appeared on her face as she said, "It's Little Ling's pleasure to meet masteress. You're really pretty, just like a goddess. And Hua, you too. Since when did you start talking so sweetly?" Yi Futian said. A gentle smile appeared on Hua Jiyu's face as she complimented. "Little Ling is pretty too." "Thank you, masteress," Little Ling replied, smiling sweetly. Student Fang Xiyuan. "It's a pleasure to meet masteress." Student Tai Tu. "Pleasure to meet masteress." Student Duo Yu. "It is a pleasure to meet masteress." The other three also greeted Hua Jiyu. They were much more serious than when they saw Yi Futian. "No need to be so serious. Just treat me like you would your master," Hua Jiyu said, smiling. She felt the respect that the youngsters had for Yi Futian. "Masteress is right. There is no need to act so restrained," Yi Futian said. "Let's go back to the village." Yes. Everyone nodded before the group flew into the sky. Before long, they had returned to the four-corner village. The villagers were all thrilled to see Yi Futian return. As they walked into the village, Little Ling asked, "Master, why didn't Grandpa come back?" Grandpa felt at ease with Master taking care of you guys. So he wanted to stay there and work hard to raise his cultivation level in order to protect you in the future. Yi Futian replied, and then smiled. Little Ling curled her lips and said, "Master, I'm not a little girl anymore. I'm a Renhuang too now." A 30-year-old Renhuang. That was indeed outrageous. Yet all four of the young cultivators were Renhuangs. 100% authentic Renhuangs. However, their cultivation processes were unique. They were born with paths naturally, fostered by the Great Path, and taught from young by the Master. From infancy, their cultivation contained the natural will of the path, which greatly accelerated their pace of cultivation and allowed them to reach their current level today. There were no shortcuts to cultivation. However, there were indeed unique individuals in the world. From this, it could be seen what Muyin Shu from the Muyin family in Four Corner Village had missed. Back then, Muyin Shu was the leader of the kids in the village. After the incident, the master, who was once just a teacher for basic knowledge, started teaching cultivation to Little Ling and the other three. Master is truly a once-in-a-lifetime figure. Yi Futian sighed inside as the group reached the private school. "Master." Yi Futian bowed slightly. "Come in," said a voice from inside. The group walked inside to the courtyard. Master was sitting there quietly, and his gaze passed over Yi Futian, Hua Jiyu, Hua Qingqing and Chen Yi. "You're all not simple," he said softly. Yi Futian looked at Jiyu, Chen Yi, and Huang Qingqing, who was beside him. Not simple. Jiyu had the great emperor's inheritance on her. Hua Qingqing's origins were indeed not simple. Chen Yi held some secrets as well. Did the master see through all of that? "Do you have something to do, returning to the village this time?" Master asked Yi Futian. "Master, we came to say goodbye and also to see the kids," Yi Futian said. "We are planning to make a trip to the Western world. Before that, we're also going to the Great Bright Domain." "That's good." Master nodded. Rather than being trapped in the original realm, it may be good to put everything down and experience the outside world far, far away. You've only been to a few places thus far, so the Western world is a pretty good choice. "Master, we want to go too," Fang Xiyuan said. "Yeah." Little Ling and Tai Tu nodded as well. Duo Yu also looked toward Yi Futian. It seemed that he was looking forward to it too. Yi Futian looked toward the four of them. Just as he was about to reject them, Master said, "These four youngsters have already learned what they have to learn. Yet they haven't gone outside Four Corner City before. It is indeed time for them to go outside. You should bring them along." The four were all Renhuang plain cultivators, yet they were all naive and simple. Their hearts were pure, and their personalities were as clean as blank pieces of paper. But it was precisely because of this that they had been able to move forward all this while and reach their current standing. Now Master thought that it was time for them to head out. As Yi Futian heard Master say so, he hesitated, then nodded and said, "All right." The four were all Renhuang plain cultivators. They would be considered powerful cultivators outside, so he didn't need to worry much about that. Not to mention Blind Tai would be there too, so he could take care of them as well. It wouldn't be a bad idea to bring them out and experience the world. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2408. Chen Yi's Secret. Chapter 2408. Chen Yi's secret. The divine prefecture was boundless and vast, and held infinite numbers of continental plates. The Great Bright Domain was the highest domain inside the divine prefecture other than the imperial city. Located on the east side of the divine prefecture, it was a domain that was somewhat peculiar among all 18 domains. Because of its history, the Great Bright Domain was shrouded in mystery and was a destination to explore for many cultivators. Furthermore, compared to other domains in the divine prefecture, today's Great Bright Domain had the smallest footprint, as a majority of its territory had been divvied up by the other surrounding domains. It was no longer part of the existing Great Bright Domain. Some even claimed that the Great Bright Domain should have never existed. Therefore, so many years later, the so-called Great Bright Realm, in fact, was only a single continent. This one remaining continent was what the world referred to as the Great Bright Realm today, which was also called the Great Bright City. A domain was a city. Naturally, this city was vast and had a mystical allure. According to legend, the Great Bright City was actually the Bright Temple, and the entire city was the grounds of the Bright Temple. This was the reason that so many years later, the Great Bright City was shrouded in light and seemed to contain the power of light. However, the light was everywhere. Many people had been exposed to the light since the day they were born. It was precisely because it was everywhere that it was more difficult to capture and comprehend. In addition to being born with this kind of ability, the vast majority of the cultivators in the world were unable to perceive the great path of light, let alone comprehend it. Chen Yi was the only expert in the method of light that Yi Futian had ever seen all these years. In the divine prefecture, the vast majority of those who cultivated the method of light were in the Great Bright City. This was the most suitable place for cultivating the power of light, but it was also the least suitable place for anyone who cultivated and comprehended other great paths. At this time, in the void outside the Great Bright Domain, a group of people was traveling through the void between the clouds and the mists. There were 9 people altogether in this group. Under them was a flying boat flashing with golden light. It contained a mighty spatial power of the Great Path. It took them shuttling through the space constantly, moving through the clouds and mist. These 9 were none other than Yi Futian and his entourage. Yi Futian, Hua Jiyu, Hua Qingqing, Chen Yi, Blind Tai, and 4 other youngsters including Fang Xiyuan. Almost there. At this time, on the flying boat, Chen Yi spoke up while still looking into the distance. He had always been somewhat of a jokester. He appeared sober and serious right now as he watched the brilliant light that was falling from the sky far away. No wonder it's called the Great Bright Field, Yi Futian whispered. The light came down from the firmament, and it was visible to the naked eye. It was something extremely magical. It was enough to distinguish that continent from other areas. It seemed as if it was an independent world of its own. No one had any idea what kind of force was capable of causing such a vision. Are you from here? Yi Futian asked Chen Yi, who was next to him. Chen nodded. I grew up here when I was a child. The light falling from the sky can make one perceive the power of light much more clearly. I have been able to perceive the existence of light since I was a child, and this type of light was nurturing to my body. That explains the illumining body of the great path you possessed. Yi Futian looked at Chen Yi and continued. So who are you? Obviously, Chen Yi was more than he appeared. Who am I? Chen Yi smiled, a little self-deprecating. That blind man said that I was born to be extraordinary, but I never felt anything close to it myself. For many years, I have been accustomed to being alone by myself. I'm nothing special. Chen Yi's statement revealed a lot to Yi Futian. It seemed that Chen Yi was someone with a story. Then, why did you go to the Donghuang domain? Yi Futian asked out of curiosity. The Great Bright Domain was actually quite a ways away from the Donghuang domain. Chunyi had gone over there in the early phases of becoming a Run Huang for unknown reasons. Because someone asked me to go, Chunyi smiled and said, watching the area where bright lights were sprinkling down. Yi Futian didn't quite understand what he meant. Did someone ask him to go? Who was it that had asked Chunyi to go to the Donghuang domain? It didn't seem that he had achieved any major feats in the Donghuang domain. Instead, he ended up escaping with him later, and came along all this way. But Chunyi didn't seem to want to continue discussing this topic. He was still looking into the distance when he suddenly asked, do you believe in fate? Yi Futian looked pensive when he heard Chunyi's question. Fate? Why would Chunyi ask him that? To a certain extent. Yi Futian nodded and continued. When I was a teenager, I knew an astrologer who was able to glimpse into the future. I don't not really, Chunyi said. His eyes moved away and redirected on Yi Futian. He smiled. However, even if I don't much believe it, I still want to try it. I don't understand, Yi Futian said. He didn't really understand what Chunyi meant by that. Perhaps you will later, Chunyi smiled and said. As for now, I can't tell you. Yi Futian looked slightly puzzled. He felt that today Chunyi seemed to be speaking in riddles. His words were not transparent at all. What kind of secret was Chunyi hiding? What was it that he wanted to say? The flying boat was still moving forward, shuttling through the void. Although they could see the place of light from afar, they were, in fact, still quite a distance away from there. The light scattered upon the world, covering the Great Bright Domain, rendering it much brighter than they ever imagined possible. Therefore, even though they could see it, they were actually still very far away. After a while, the flying boat broke through the clouds and mist, and finally came to the Great Bright Domain. In the void, there was no mist or clouds, only the light that shone from the infinite source. Yi Futian stretched out his hand, and he could see the light shining on his hand with his naked eyes. This world was much brighter than any place he had ever been. When the light was shining on his body, he could feel something miraculous. Probably it was exactly as Chunyi had described. Someone could only be born with this kind of light power. Where are we going? Yi Futian asked Chunyi. This Great Bright Domain used to be just a city, but it was in fact the territory of the Bright Temple. In this city, it was rumored that the ruins of the Bright Temple are there. And that's where we are heading. Chunyi said, keep going. I will give you directions. Do the ruins of the Bright Temple really exist? Yi Futian said with some doubt. If so, how many people came here over the years to try to find the ruins of the Bright Temple? Are you asking me? Chunyi shrugged and said. But you are right. Over the years, there have been many people who came in search of its ruins. Even the domain chief's manor guarding the Great Bright Domain was built close to the ruins for obvious reasons. However, no one has ever succeeded in finding the ruins, so who knows whether it exists or not. Then, why did you ask me to come here with you? Yi Futian asked. And this question seemed to touch the heart of the matter at hand. Chunyi looked at him and smiled. Because somebody believes in it. Chapter 2409, Blind Chen. Chapter 2409. Blind Chen. To the east of the Great Bright City, there was the Land of the Ruins. This area was fairly large, and people often came to explore it. At the far end of the ruins there was a door. From the other side of the door, it was clear that some light seemed to be coming through the cracks, illuminating the ruins. This door was rather interesting. It was transparent in nature, but behind the door, there seemed to be more ruins. It was as if a small world existed beyond this door. Some had walked through that door before, but many who had walked through that door were blinded by the light inside. Some also tried to destroy the door, but found they were unable to do so. Some of these people who tried were incredibly powerful, but all to no avail. Perhaps, because of the peculiarity of this door, many were convinced that these ruins were once the site of the Bright Temple. According to the legends, this door was called the Portal of Light. It had been said that all those in the temple must walk through it to experience the baptism of the light, before they could become a part of the Bright Temple. Around the site of these ruins, Many cultivators were gathering. However, in the many years that had gone by, these ruins had been explored over and over again, searched every which way possible. Any treasures that had once existed, no doubt, had long disappeared many years ago. If it weren't for that door, no one would even entertain the notion that this was the site of the Bright Temple. Even so, in the Great Bright City, fewer and fewer people believed in it. On the contrary, this seemed to affirm the beliefs in a few very powerful principalities, and it was them that had been guarding and waiting in the surrounding area of the ruins. There was only this one city inside the Great Bright Domain, and the top forces in the Great Bright City spread out from the site of the ruins around the general area. It could be said that these dilapidated ruins were the absolute center of the Great Bright City. At this time, on the remains of these ruins were several young men and women with extraordinary temperaments standing there, looking at the portal of light. "Does this door really lead to the light?" a woman whispered. Her body was surrounded by a halo of great path brilliance, indicating that she was in existence in the Runhuang realm. "Who knows? But that's what the elders have always said, so it must be true," the young man next to her replied solemnly. "Perhaps they were wrong." The woman shook her head. "In the past few years, the original realm has changed drastically, attracting cultivators from all over the world. Countless from the 18 domains of the Divine Prefecture have gone to the original realm. There are even rumors that the changes between heaven and earth started in the original realm. Only the Great Bright City seems to have been isolated from everyone else in the Divine Prefecture. What's the point of guarding these ruins, just because of something that the blind man said? Unless, of course, because the elders really believe that one day the Bright Temple will reappear here again. At least the blind man from Chen's garden believes in it deeply," a slightly older cultivator next to them added. He appeared to be around 30 years or so, and there was a divine aurora hidden within his eyes. Can blind Chen's words be trusted? The woman looked dumbfounded. Everyone in the Great Bright City has always said that blind Chen is blind, but can see the light. Just what is so special about him that so many people believe in what he said? As a blind man, can he really see the light? Maybe. At least for these many years, no one in the Great Bright City has ever touched blind Chen, and they all hold a certain respect for him. I do not know why, but those able cultivators must have their reasons. The person next to her joined in. A look of disdain flashed through the woman's eyes, and there was some arrogance on her face. The original realm is the center of impending changes between heaven and earth, but the elders don't care one bit. Just a word from blind Chen, and the entire Great Bright City will be destroyed by the ruins. The woman's tone was mocking. She glanced at the portal of light ahead and said, "Since the elders won't, I will ask blind Chen myself whether his words are true or not." The people then looked at her, and they could see a hint of pride on her face. They all knew that the woman had wanted to go to the original realm when she heard that many top figures of the world had embarked on a journey there. These cultivators of the 18 domains in the Divine Prefecture and other cultivators from other worlds had uncovered many relics in the land of the original realm, all of which were events that she greatly desired to witness. But because of something blind Chen said 20 years ago, the entire Great Bright City fell into a state of suspense, and no one dared to leave. Everybody stayed to guard and watch the ruins. No one ever questioned his words. But today she wanted to ask him, how could a blind man see the light? "Don't be hasty," the person next to her exhorted. "If they can, the elders must have done it a long time ago. Everyone in the Great Bright Domain believes in it, so there must be a reason. So the light will descend, and the divine relic will reappear?" The woman smiled sarcastically with a degree of contempt. Something blind Chen said 20 years ago was why the cultivators of the Great Bright Domain waited for over 2 decades, including her own family. Because of it, they had missed the grand occasion at the original realm. At this time, in the void not far away was a flying boat, floating there silently, not disturbing anybody. Yi Futian and the others stood on top of the flying boat and glanced at the ruins ahead. He then put away the flying boat implement. "These must be the ruins of the Great Bright Temple that Chenyi was speaking of," he decided silently. He didn't expect that the place would be so broken that only a single door was left intact. However, this door seemed a little interesting as light was emitted from behind it, suggesting that there was a world hidden behind the door. Futian glanced at the woman speaking before them, then looked at Chun-Yi next to him. But Chun-Yi was expressionless. It was as if he hadn't heard anything the woman was saying. Futian remembered that on their way over, Chun-Yi had mentioned that a blind man once told him that he was meant to be extraordinary. He wondered if the blind man named Chun that the woman was referring to was just a coincidence, or if the blind man they talked about were one and the same. 20 years ago? Futian thought. It was some 20 years ago, when Chun-Yi met him in the Donghua domain. That blind man is the same as he was before, fond of speaking nonsense, Chun-Yi said in a low voice with a cold expression in his eyes. He seemed to be full of contempt for the blind man he referred to, as if they had heard what he said. Those few people in the front turned to look at them. They could feel that Futian and his party were unusual. The woman smiled and said, "You too think that blind man was an imposter?" Chun-Yi looked at the woman and asked, "Who are you?" "Lin Shi of the Lin family," the woman said. "The Lin family?" Chen glanced at the woman with indifference in his eyes and said, "I can chastise that blind man. But who the heck are you?" "You." The woman's expression altered slightly as coldness shot out from her eyes. Futian was also caught by surprise. It seemed that what Chun said was different from what he thought. Chapter 24:10. The Blind Man Welcomes a Guest. Chapter 24:10. The blind man welcomes a guest. When Chun-Yi was talking about the blind man, he did not seem to mind. However, when he heard other people hurling insults at the blind man, his attitude immediately changed. It was clear that he still respected Blind Chen very much. Futian was curious about the identity of Blind Chen and what his relationship with Chun-Yi was. Lin Shi from Lin Clan glanced over at Chun-Yi. There was a cold look in her eyes. She walked towards where Chun-Yi was. The youths beside her also looked towards Futian's group. They had not seen these people before. They probably weren't cultivators from the top forces of Great Bright City. There was only one city in the Great Bright domain. The strongest forces were all in this region. This was different from other domains. The members of the local forces had seen each other before and could recognize each other at a glance. However, they did not recognize any of these people. "Who are you?" asked Lin Shi as she gave Chun-Yi an indifferent look. Chun-Yi swept a cold and arrogant glance at her and replied, "You are not worthy of knowing." The expression of the group of cultivators of the Lin clan changed slightly, although these people had yet to unleash their auras, and they could not sense their overall cultivation levels. This group of cultivators had extraordinary temperaments. They should be very powerful. Otherwise, the members of the Lin clan would have already attacked Futian's group. Even so, their Lin clan was still a top force of Great Bright City. This person was putting on airs and looked down on other people. Wasn't he being too presumptuous? A slightly older youth from the Lin clan flicked the hair on his forehead. The aura of the Great Path flowed around his body. He was actually a 6th-tier middle-level Renhuang. His aura was astonishing. The domineering aura permeated the space as it swept towards Futian and his group. He said, "In Great Bright City, no one is too mighty to be known by the cultivators of the Lin clan." After he said this, a powerful aura of the Great Path burst forth from his body. Invisible sword will circulated in the space, causing a killing intent to loom over the surroundings. The formless sword will was everywhere. Futian and his group could sense it clearly. With such a short distance between the two parties, the cultivator could launch an attack at them with a mere thought. "You better not attack," warned Chun-Yi as he cast a glance at the youth. He still had not unleashed his aura of the Great Path. Arrogance flashed in his eyes, as though he was looking down on that cultivator of the Lin clan. It seemed like he did not take the other party seriously. Chun-Yi's attitude caused the pressure of the aura of the Great Path, unleashed by the cultivator of the Lin clan, to increase. The formless sword will howled impatiently, as though it would erupt at any second. His gaze was dead fixed on Chun-Yi as his palm extended forward slightly. He wanted to attack, but he was a little fearful of Chun-Yi's overbearing confidence. The space appeared exceptionally suppressive at the moment. A few other cultivators of the Lin clan also unleashed their wills. They stared at the group before them intently. Even though Chun-Yi had not said much, his demeanor was presumptuous. He clearly did not take the Lin clan seriously. Chun-Yi was not the only reason the youth was holding himself back from attacking. The gaze of the white-haired youth beside Chun-Yi was too calm. This calmness originated from unwavering confidence. There was also the blind man who stood behind them. He was merely standing there quietly, but his presence alone was enough to suppress the others. This group of people was most likely a powerful foreign troop, since the group refused to unleash their auras of the Great Path. The youth had no way of figuring them out. Buzz. Right at this moment, a beam of light shot up to the sky somewhere in the distance. The light was actually more brilliant than any other lights in the heavens and the earth. It was akin to a light that could illuminate heaven itself. This scene caused the cultivators who had gathered here to reveal surprised expressions. All of them looked in that direction. "It's from Old Street," someone mumbled. "That's where Blind Chen lives," another person whispered. What was going on? Soon, another beam of light shot towards where they had come from. It was like a bridge made of light that extended all the way here from Old Street. The light shone on the ground. Aside from where they were, there seemed to be similar lights shining on other locations. At this moment, in Great Bright City, many cultivators from the large clans raised their heads and looked in the direction where the lights were shining. They expanded their wills and soon figured out the source of these beams of light. The blind man was welcoming a guest. Somewhere, a middle-aged cultivator commanded with a deep and rich voice, "Go and find out who is the guest that Blind Chen is welcoming." One by one, cultivators rose into the sky from various locations in Great Bright City. They were all rushing towards the same destination. Over at the ruins, Chun-Yi looked in the direction where the light came from and mumbled, "It's Blind Chun." After he said this, he ignored the cultivators from the Lin clan and left immediately. He moved towards where the light came from by traversing across the sky. Futian and his group naturally followed after Chun-Yi. The cultivators from the Lin clan watched them leave and still did not attack. "Our clan members will most likely head over there too. Let's go and check it out," the leader of their group said. Lin Shi's gaze was cold as he continued to stare in the direction where Futian and his group had gone. Old Street of Great Bright City was a narrow alley. An old mansion stood there. It appeared somewhat shabby, but it was still quite clean and tidy. A rather famous figure in Great Bright City resided in this mansion. He was Blind Chen. Some people crowned him Chen the Diviner. Chen the Diviner had never revealed his cultivation in front of anyone. No one knew his cultivation plane. He was just like any other ordinary old blind man. However, rumor has it that he had been living for many years. This set him apart from other people. The mighty figures in Great Bright City respected Blind Chen because his appearance remained the same throughout the years. He looked exactly the same now as he did when those mighty figures were still in their youths. Rumor has it that Blind Chen was a mighty astrologer. He could read fortunes and pry into the past and the future. However, this rumor had yet to be verified. No one could tell for sure whether or not it was true. It was because Blind Chen had never read anyone's fortune before. Throughout the years, many people sought him for fortune-telling, but he refused to even meet them. Some people claimed that he did not dare to reveal God's design for fear of dying early. Yet, more than 20 years ago, Blind Chen once said that light would descend upon them. The divine relic would appear once again. The people of Great Bright City treated Blind Chen's words as a prophecy. Since then, various major clans and forces stationed in the city had never left this place before. Even when the original realm went through huge changes, and the cultivators in the Divine Prefecture were called to assemble, they chose to remain here. They were all waiting for the prophecy to be fulfilled. They had waited for more than 20 years. Some people asked Blind Chen about the prophecy before, but he didn't respond to them. After so many years, more and more people were suspicious about the validity of the prophecy. One of them was Lin Shi from the Lin clan. She did not believe in Blind Chen at all. In her opinion, he had deceived the crowd with a lie, causing them to miss out on an opportunity. She believed that opportunities awaited in the original realm. However, Fortune and misfortune were two sides of the same coin. How many people had actually managed to obtain fateful encounters in the original realm? The seniors in Great Bright City most likely had their own considerations too. However, after more than 2 decades, the old mansion inhabited by Blind Chen finally showed signs of activity again. Currently, a beam of light shot up to the clouds from inside the old mansion. The door of the mansion was wide open. Beams of light radiated outward, as though they were paving paths of light. Cultivators from all corners of the city arrived at the mansion by following the light trails. Was the prophecy he proclaimed more than 2 decades ago true or false? Chapter 2411 An Honorable Guest? Chapter 2411 An Honorable Guest? Cultivators gradually gathered in front of the old mansion. These cultivators all had extraordinary temperaments and were disciples from large clans. The Great Bright Domain was called the Divine Bright Domain in the past. It had passed its heyday and had now become one of the weaker domains among the 18 domains of the Divine Prefecture. Moreover, the domain only consisted of one city. However, due to its glorious past, there were still quite a number of powerful forces residing in the current Great Bright Domain. The blind man has opened his doors, commented someone. At Old Street, many people stared at the light that was still radiating outwards from within the wide-open doors. Their hearts trembled. Throughout the years, the doors were shut most of the time. Now the doors were open. Who was the guest that Blind Chen was about to receive? Was this related to the prophecy that he proclaimed 20 years ago? In the sky above Old Street, many silhouettes appeared. Their gazes landed on the old mansion too. These cultivators who had just arrived were people from different factions. They each occupied a spot in the sky. Futian and his group arrived as well. They stood in the sky above Old Street as they observed the mansion. Futian cast a glance at Chen Yi, who was beside him. Judging from Chen Yi's response, he was most likely acquainted with Blind Chen. Moreover, their relationship was special. Was the beam of light that shot out from this mansion related to Chen Yi? As expected, Chen Yi looked towards the inside of the mansion with a conflicted look. He said with a low voice, "Blind man, I'm back." "Is this your home?" Futian asked softly. Chen Yi revealed a puzzled expression. Home? Did he have one? Who knows? Chen Yi had been calling him blind man since he was young. However, he was indeed raised by Blind Chen. "I'll go in and take a look first," Chen Yi said to Futian and the rest. "Go ahead," Futian said while nodding. He was aware that Chen Yi had a special relationship with the owner of this mansion. Alone, Chen Yi walked forward and entered the doors. Immediately, countless gazes landed on him. The crowd revealed strange expressions. Someone asked right away, "Who is he?" The various cultivators revealed puzzled looks. They were not sure. They had not seen this person before. Chen Yi entered the old mansion. Nothing happened after he entered. This caused the crowd to reveal even more bizarre expressions. Blind Chen actually allowed people to enter the mansion just like that? Many years ago, Blind Chen once took in a youth. The youth was dressed in rags and was filthy. However, Blind Chen still took good care of him. Do you all still remember this? Just then, a middle-aged man said this as he stood in the sky. A few elderly cultivators nodded and said, "That's right." Back then, there was also a rumor that someone saw light coming from the body of the filthy youth. That's right. In different locations, one by one, people began recalling that there had been such a youth before. Someone claimed, "I saw it with my own eyes before." I still remember that when I saw the light on his body back then, I was astonished. After that, I never saw him again. He seemed to have been hidden away by Blind Chen. Down below, the group from the Lin clan also arrived. Lin Shi personally saw Chen Yi enter the mansion. She immediately understood why Chen Yi had such a huge reaction just now. So, he actually already knew Blind Chen and was raised by him. From the looks of it, the youth was Chen Yi without a doubt. Lin Shi lifted her head and looked in one direction. She discovered that the cultivators of the Lin clan had also arrived. Her group took to the sky and walked over to where the ladder was. She then informed the seniors in a low voice about what had transpired before their arrival. "Father, Does the clan actually believe that Blind Chen can see the light and predict the future? Asked Lin Shi incredulously. Her father shook his head and answered, no one knows. However, there is indeed more to Blind Chen than meets the eye. He has lived in Great Bright City for many years. When I was young, Blind Chen was already as he is now, and he is still around today. Cultivators do have very long lifespans. What's so strange about that? Asked Lin Shi. Once one reaches the Renhuang Plain, they will live as long as the heavens and the earth. Maybe, the middle-aged man replied indifferently. Lin Shi lowered her head and glanced down below. She then said, all the cultivators in the Great Bright Domain have wasted more than 20 years because of what he said. Until now we are still waiting. I don't understand. When the middle-aged man heard what she said, he looked at the old mansion with a cold and indifferent gaze. What she said was true. After more than 20 years, where were the light and the divine relic? Today we need to get a straight answer from Blind Chen, he said in a low voice. What's the matter? Lin Kong, do you not trust the old diviner? Another middle-aged man said loudly as he looked at Lin Shi's father. This person was dressed in a long blue robe. He was tall and had exceptional cultivation. He simply stood there and gave off the airs of an authoritative figure. This person was the current family head of the Lan family, a top force of Great Bright City. He had powerful cultivation and was a Renhuang at his peak. It is not that I do not trust him. It is just that, after more than 20 years, the old diviner should give us an explanation, replied Lin Kong in a deep voice. You can ask the old diviner personally later, the Lan family head answered with a smile. In another location, there stood a group of cultivators. They were adorned in long robes as red as flames. The mark of a red maple leaf was also carved on their bodies. Faint scorching currents of heat could be seen emanating from their figures. The leader of this group was a cultivator who appeared rather young. He was extraordinarily handsome, and his face was chiseled and well-defined. Although scorching heat currents were emanating from his body, he gave off a cold and arrogant air. He was Yu Ho from the Yu family. He was the cultivator with the most outstanding talent in the family. Aside from the sun flare, he also comprehended the method of light. Although he was just an 8th-tier Renhuang for now, the family head of the Yu family, who was Yu Ho's father, had already begun to let him handle family matters. In another location, there stood a group of cultivators dressed in white robes. Their temperaments were outstanding, giving off an otherworldly vibe. This group of people was not from a major family. They were from a sect, the only sect in Great Bright City. 7 Stars Mansion was established by a prominent figure many years ago. The chief of 7 Stars Mansion had unfathomable cultivation and rarely made an appearance in public. Even today, the 7 Stars Mansion chief was not here. His 7 disciples had come instead. They were the 7-star lords of 7 Stars Mansion. Each of them had very powerful cultivation. Their leader was currently the most exceptional cultivator in the sect, the head of the 7-star lords, 7 Night Star Lord. Lin Clan, Lan family, Yu family, and 7 Stars Mansion were currently the 4 strongest forces in Great Bright City. Of course, aside from them, several other forces had arrived. They were spread out across the region. However, they did not stand out as much as these 4 major forces. Since the old diviner has opened his doors to welcome a guest today, he will naturally solve the riddle that he left behind 20 years ago, said 7 Night Star Lord. The rest cast a glance at him and ignored his words. They continued to stare at the old mansion intently. Today, Blind Chen welcomed a guest by showering the entire Great Bright City with light. All of them wanted to know who exactly Blind Chen was waiting to receive. Just as the crowd was discussing the matter, 2 figures emerged from the old mansion. The surroundings fell silent immediately. Everyone had their gazes on the entrance. Then, they saw 2 people emerging from the doors. One of them was Chen Yi, who had entered the mansion just now. The other person was blind and wore ragged clothes. He held a crutch in his right hand. He appeared no different than an ordinary disabled old man. The crowd could not sense any aura from him. He was in his twilight years, and looked like he would pass away at any moment. His long, white hair appeared somewhat unkempt. Besides that, he kept a long white beard. He looked as though he had not tidied his hair for years. With his appearance, He looked nothing like an erudite master. However, despite his shabby appearance, his body was squeaky clean. There was not even a single speck of dust on his ragged clothes. He was sloppy but not dirty. "Greetings, old diviner." The heads of the Lin clan and Lan family were more polite. Even though they were standing in midair, they bowed slightly in the direction where Blind Chen appeared. However, Yu Ho and the Seven-Star Lords from Seven Stars Mansion were not so courteous. Yu Ho stood there unbudgingly and said, "The old master has finally come out from seclusion. How can I not come out? There's an honorable guest arriving today." Blind Chen took a few steps forward with the help of his crutch, before he finally said something. Even though his voice was not loud, everyone around could hear him clearly. "Is he related to the prophecy that you proclaimed 20 years ago?" asked Lin Kong, the head of the Lin clan. "Yes," replied Blind Chen. He actually admitted it right away. This caused the surrounding cultivators to turn serious. The guest was actually related to the prophecy. Furthermore, this was the first time Blind Chen validated any information related to the prophecy. From the looks of it, with the arrival of this extraordinary figure, the ruins of the Bright Temple might reveal itself once again. "Who is this honorable guest that you are referring to?" Lin Kong further inquired. Blind Chen held onto his crutch and continued to move forward in a certain direction. Everyone was observing where he was heading. Futian still stood at his spot silently. When he saw Blind Chen moving towards him, he couldn't help but reveal an astonished expression. Was he the honorable guest that Blind Chen mentioned? Even though Futian had just arrived here along with Chen Yi, based on the intel that he briefly gathered, Blind Chen was not an ordinary old man. Even the top Renhuangs here crowned Blind Chen as Chen the Diviner. A person like him had no reason to welcome Chen Yi's friend with such fanfare. Blind Chen even caused such a huge commotion with his exceptional hospitality. Moreover, Blind Chen mentioned that this guest was related to the prophecy. It was precisely because of this that Futian felt somewhat strange. Something was off. Had Blind Chen been waiting for him? The things that Chen Yi said to him before this were also rather baffling. Why did he feel like his encounter with Chen Yi back then was not just a coincidence? When they looked to the sky above, they saw Yu Ho looking cold and arrogant as he looked down and said, "Who is this man? And what does he have to do with the ruins at the Temple of Light? How are we to interpret the prophecy? It is a rare occasion that drew all the cultivators from the great bright city here today. It is a perfect time for our questions to be answered. Yes, everyone is here today, so why don't you say a few words to let us know what is going on? And who is this young man in white?" Lin Kong, the head of the Lin family, added. "How could they leave without some explanation from the blind man? You will understand in the future." "There's no rush," Blind Chen said lightly. After a brief pause, he continued moving forward without any intention of stopping. He did not intend to explain anything to anyone else. Watching him walking towards the old house, everyone around him frowned, displeasure in their eyes. When the light appeared today, the blind man came out to greet the guests, but didn't even bother to speak to them before sending them on their way. At this time, a figure in the void descended from the sky, followed that beam of light, and landed above the old house. She simply stood there, watching Blind Chen and the others. "Lin Shi, don't be rude." In the void, the clan leader of the Lin family chastised her. However, next to Lin Shi, a few more people were descending as well. It was the same group of people that had quarreled with Chen Yi and the others at the site of the ruins. However, the cultivators who descended later did not bother to stop Lin Shi but hovered and watched her. Obviously, they had some ideas of their own. These later generations of Run Huang were egotistical individuals who held themselves in high regard. They had never understood the tolerance the elders exhibited to a blind man. Today they wanted to find out why, no matter the cost. Even though Lin Kong had chided them on the surface, he didn't order anyone to stop them. Obviously, he also had the thought of pushing the matter further. Blind Chen had overstepped his boundaries. For more than 20 years, he had never given them an explanation. Elder is well known by all, and I heard that the elder can predict the events of past and future, as well as prophesizing and predicting events not yet known. May I ask the elder to predict my future today so I see for myself? Lin she asked while looking at blind Chen. Her words were respectful enough, but her tone was not all that kind. There was even a sharp sword flowing upon her, as if it might break out of her body at any moment and attack blind Chen. Blind Chen raised his head slightly and faced in Lin Shi's direction. Chen Yi took a step forward and said coldly, "Get back." Good. But at this moment, blind Chen spat out something that puzzled Chen Yi to no end. He turned back to look at the blind man. Good. What did that mean? Lin Shi was taken aback as well. She looked at blind Chen, not understanding at all what this word meant. I predict that you will have a catastrophe today, pronounced blind Chen. As soon as his voice faded, the surrounding space suddenly quieted. There seemed to be some hidden meanings in what he said. Lin Shi stared at blind Chen as well. His eyes sharpened more than before. A cold voice came out saying, I don't believe it. I know you don't believe it. It's precisely because you don't believe it that there is this catastrophe. Blind Chen continued in a calm voice and said, Go back now and you might escape it. If you continue to persist, I am afraid there is no running away from this catastrophe. What catastrophe? Lin Shi took a step forward, as the sword flowing in the direction of blind Chen shrouded him. Catastrophe of death. Blind Chen's response was simple. Catastrophe of death. Was this a prophecy or a threat? Even the aura of those from the Lin family in the void suddenly chilled. Lin Kong, the clan leader of the Lin family, whose eyes contained that sword will of his, now directed towards blind Chen, who was below catastrophe of death? Hearing these words, anger emerged in his heart. You exaggerate, Lin Kong said coldly. Suddenly, several cultivators from the Lin family stepped down and appeared all around Lin Shi, as if they understood the meaning of the words spoken by their clan leader. Although blind Chen couldn't see clearly, his perception seemed to have seen everything. There was a self-deprecating smile on his face as he said, Indeed, fate cannot be avoided after all. All the surrounding cultivators displayed a curious look. If Lin Shi died, would that count as a prophecy? Would it be the words of blind Chen that lead to her death, or the prophecy itself? However, the cultivators from the Lin family didn't seem to believe it. A powerful aura came down, and the quiet space was becoming slightly suffocating. Lin Shi continued to move forward towards blind Chen. However, from blind Chen's perspective, this was fate. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.